When it comes to avoiding injuries, this is the number one thing that you need to keep in mind moving forward. One of the things I hate to receive on a daily basis are emails, phone calls, and conversations stemming from injuries. And injuries can happen for a lot of different reasons. And I think one of the ironic parts about an injury is most people envision an injury because you're doing a sport-specific activity too hard or too long, and absolutely that can contribute to it. But what I find interesting is most people are getting injured because they simply are not warmed up. Now again, everybody's tight on time, I completely understand that. But when you start to warm up a muscle tissue, you reduce the risk of injuring the muscle because of a self-defense mechanism that the body has instilled in itself. The human heart is the number one organ that the human body cares the most about. This is why when we get extremely cold, we lose appendages, because the blood is always going to come back around the heart when we're in extreme conditions such as that. And as a byproduct, we literally get freeze bite on our fingers and or our toes. That's the easiest illustration for you to get the idea that the blood sits centralized around the heart. Now let's move it into a sports environment. When you're laying down at night, the body does the same thing. It draws most of the blood up to the body, up into the heart region. So if you don't take the time, if you're working out in the morning, if you don't take the time to get the blood redistributed into the extremities, those muscles are going to be cold. Blood is warm by nature. Anytime you start to add any physical activity, that friction creates dilation, the blood vessels open up. Now that warm blood goes into all soft tissue. So stop and think about this. If I take a piece of metal and I get it extremely cold and I try to bend it, I have a tendency to snap it. And that's how muscle tissues are. Now, it's not as extreme. Obviously, if you get out of bed and you just stretch like a cat or a dog, it's not like you're going to rip every muscle in your body. What I'm saying to you is a lot of people who report themselves to us are injured or become injured simply because they're tight on time and they blow through their warm-up. I was supposed to be at the gym for an hour. I've only got 40 minutes, so I'm going to jump right into the main set. That's the worst thing you could ever do, because I'd rather you shorten the main set so we can come back again tomorrow. If you blow through your warm-up and you go right into the main set and you pop a tendon or a ligament or you tear a muscle, isn't that going to be frustrated? Because now we might be out 6 or 8 weeks instead of just cutting the main set short. We want to be available and have the ability to come back again tomorrow. So when you look at the importance of a warm-up and how it avoids an injury, I hope that that'll create a paradigm shift for you. The second thing that I want you to also keep in mind is the way that you stretch. So for example, if you see somebody stretching and they're up, let's take something like hamstrings, and you've got a foot up on a chair or a desk or a bench, and you're bouncing your upper body. That's called ballistic stretching. That's the quickest way for you to actually tear a muscle. The weight of your upper body overrides what's called the myotactic stretch reflex. It's a defense mechanism inside the belly of the muscle tissue. It's designed to keep you from tearing it. And unfortunately, when you bounce like that, you have a tendency to tear the muscle tissue. So that's how these things start to compound. If you're stretching incorrectly using ballistic stretching and you're stretching cold muscles, they're going to tear. If you're trying to do some sport-specific activity and the muscle is cold, you run the risk of tearing it. The third thing to keep in mind is the idea that you may skip the warm-up, you may try to do a little bit of stretching to try to quote-unquote loosen up, and then you jump right into an intensity level that you're literally going from idle to almost wide open. What that does, that puts a tremendous amount of load on the tissue and the attachments, and you increase the risk of injury yet again. You can even go so far, and a lot of people don't think about this as well. If you don't warm down, right? We talked about getting warmed up. If you don't cool down, if you're cool down, some people call it warm down, we tend to call it a cool down, warm up, cool down. If you don't allow yourself to cool down properly, it's kind of like shutting a valve, right? You've got all that metabolic waste that's sitting trapped in the extremities. Now, that's a very extreme example, but if you want to reduce the amount of soreness and the inflammation and swelling tomorrow, take the time to cool down properly. So these are all things when we're looking at the subject of injuries, it's, pardon me, it's like a bookcase. There's two ends and then there's a lot in the middle. So I wanted to take a little bit of time here today, bring that to your attention, hopefully change your perspective. And again, if you're ever tight on time, cut the main part of your workout down, allow for a warm up and a cool down. It's going to reduce your risk of injury. It's going to improve recovery. If you happen to have a question at all, please do me a favor, send it to me and my team at contact@coachrob.com. We are putting up a video every day here on YouTube. I want to thank you for your time today, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.